Welcome back to Four Titles, One Truth, where real conversations meet real experience. We talk about life beyond the uniform, leadership, family, and how it all shapes us.
Yeah, and today we're getting into one of the biggest turning points in any military career, deployments. Long and short, they are the moment where life as you know it slows down, but the rest of the world keeps spinning on without you.
And we're going to try to make you understand that statement. Deployment changes everything. Relationships, trust, identity. So today we're unpacking what it really felt like to us.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, simple. What were the emotions what were the emotions you had before your first deployment? I'm talking about notification to execution. And how did they change once you hit the ground?
Okay, so we're talking about a long deployment.
Absolutely.
Because I know that different services have, they're called a short thing, a deployment. So we're talking about a long deployment during a wartime.
We're talking about deployments where fake bullets were not used.
All right, got you. So, so I was at Fort Bragg, and I was with the field unit, so I knew we knew like 6, 7, 8 months before we were gonna
roll out.
Gonna go. So a lot of things that when you find out, when you do that initial find out, it's like, okay, what and you just start. Okay, we're looking at the training calendar and
what
seeing
rank
what
were
we're
you?
gonna be doing. I was a major.
Okay, so you were seasoned.
I was a major. Yeah.
Seasoned soldier.
Yep.
Okay.
So I wasn't at that time, at the notification time, wasn't nervous.
Yeah.
Wasn't scared or anything like that. Most of it was like just knowing who was going to be on the team with this, because that was during the time where we had the Profis system. I don't know if y'all ever had to deal with that, but like on the medical side, we used to have a system called Profis, where on the field unit part, we had probably the minimal amount of folks to go out and do anything, if need be. But whenever you had to do, like when we were doing deployments, big deployments and things like that, then we would have to call folks from different hospitals and things to come in that were part of that special to get the needed staff to run whatever size hospital we were going to be running at that time.
Okay.
So that piece, just trying to that's the piece probably you worry about most. Is like, who are you getting? Because you're hoping that they don't send a bunch of young folks, that haven't, don't have experience.
Right. Don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, because then you're doing a lot of teaching and the some of the stress of being deployed. People who have never deployed. That on top of the stress of doing the job. Then it just gets to be a lot. So,
which, by the way, no unit ever in the military has been notified for deployment with the right amount of people.
No.
Because you're going to lose people due to PCS, ETS. Then you're going to lose people doing the different job
profiles.
Changes for them. Yep. Then you got profiles. Yeah. And that leaves you with a hard number. And then the Army has to catch up to give you the number you actually need.
So that piece, it wasn't so much at that time. Wasn't so much wasn't, like I said, scared or nervous. It was just like, okay, the anxious, like, okay, who are we gonna get then? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Because we kind of know where we're going, but they can't officially put that stuff out. If you're gonna be in a hard shell, or you're gonna be setting up tents and stuff. So as we got closer and we started getting, about a month prior to, we start getting people start coming in that were going to be deploying with us. So then it starts getting like, okay.
Getting real.
It start, and you look at, my kids were both, they were young, just starting school, like 6 and, what was Mackenzie? Probably 8. So they were like first in kindergarten or second grade in kindergarten.
And how many years had you been in the Army?
I had been in the Army for 10, 11.
11 years, okay.
Yeah, about 11 years.
Okay.
Or 10, 95.
Okay, so 10 or 11.
11, yeah. Right around that time frame. So you start getting, a little more anxious, a little nervous. You let your mind starts going, every which way, but
worst case scenarios.
Yeah. So because it's like, okay, I don't want to get, because you're doing your shoot, you're firing, you're doing all of those things, and you're looking at the folks around you, where it's like, okay,
do they got my back?
Yeah, that
Can I depend on them?
And because you really don't know, like especially for us, you really don't know how good they are at their job, until you actually get put in it, till they're actually doing it, unless you knew them from before. So I was doing some callbacks to people who I knew at different places, like, hey, how is such and such, or how, what are they, so that I was doing some of those types of things just to see where we were starting at, with the group of people that we had, with the group of folks that we had. So, and then that, you get down to that week before and a couple of days, and then the morning of, it was just, you get sad. I mean, just oh my goodness, yeah. So it's like getting dropped off, because I got dropped off at the unit where we were getting picked up, by the buses to go down to the
airport.
Yeah, we flew right out of
Flatline, that's
right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hope.
Yeah. Yep. And it dropped. We had a little. I drove a minivan. I had a Odyssey minivan. It was.
He
nice.
was a soccer dad.
Hey, it was nice. It was easy. Open up, the kids could jump right in, close the door, get themselves in.
Y'all put those seatbelts on now.
That's right. It was good. So they dropped me out. They were pulled up to the place. Both the kids were there. And I'm sitting there, start crying, and
before you leave your family.
Yeah. And my son, youngest at that time, he was 5. He was gonna turn 6 in a month or so. But he was like, Mom, why is Dad crying? Why is Dad crying? I was like,
he ain't no man.
I was like, it's okay.
Stop
crying, yeah. Stop crying, yeah.
I was just playing.
That's basically, that joker was a male chauvinist. He had some things going on when he was young. He had some things going on, but it was that piece. I was sad. I was sad at that time.
Right.
But as soon as they, got out, hugged, kissed.
Yeah.
I was
mission.
Yeah,
focused.
it was like, yep, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get over there. So that was the
lead up.
Yeah, the initial, and then once we got there, we were we were right there, and started with, like, when they were just about to start surging and stuff. So we got there, and we were on the move, working. Right. We were busy.
Were y'all replacing the unit?
Yes,
was there? Okay.
We were replacing the unit. So so and it was cool because some people who you work with before and things like that. So, and then it's like, okay, how can we improve this place? Better. Right. How can we make it a little better? Because we were falling in on a hard
stand.
Yep, hard stand. We were because we were in the green zone. We were in Baghdad, and I tell folks it wasn't green. It wasn't.
Yeah, green is a very loose.
Yeah, it wasn't green.
Term.
Yeah, so got there. And I think that's the thing that helped a lot, was that we were busy.
Yeah. So
we didn't have time to sit there and think, get all into our feelings and think about stuff, and it was a time where we didn't have, we just had phone. It was phones. We didn't have a lot of, it wasn't FaceTime or anything like that. They had, what was that, Skype? I think they might have had Skype.
Yeah, Skype.
And that was if the internet that we had
Messenger.
was it working? Was it hooked up? And it was dial up. It was all of those things that.
Was your family up?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but we had a phone on our area where we could call back to like the call back to the hospital, and then they would transfer us to family. So, but then again, it was trying. Okay, what time is it? Is are people up? So, and I was fortunate because I worked night shift the whole time I was there. So when it was nighttime over there, it was daytime over here. So I was able to catch them at times. But I mean, we were busy, and then we found out 6 months into it, or about 5.5 months into it, that we were getting extended. So we went from 12 months to 15 months. So that was a big punch in the gut, because it's like, oh my God, I got to stay over here for this. Because we were seeing.
And you were getting ready to get over the hump. That halfway.
Yeah, I mean, and it was, it's just like, I mean, and I try to, people that are not in our area, like where we are, like I was in the operating room at that time.
Okay.
So we saw the injuries and all of those things every day, and because, we're not on the front line, or we're not seeing it when it happens, but we're seeing those same types every day from everywhere in the country. So it was we had to desensitize ourselves a lot, because you saw some injury, because we took care of. We didn't just take care of our U.S. soldiers. We took care of our foreign allies. We took care of civilians. We took care of the combatants. We took care of prisoners. I mean, we took care of everybody. Yeah. So I mean, it was something.
Yeah, exactly.
It was something. How about you? Yeah, I mean that's.
The hospital is every day real. At least out in combat, you get a moment. Yeah, I mean it was.
We wasn't. I mean, we wasn't firing off our weapons. Yeah. But we were getting. I mean, we got mortared every day. Yeah. They got the Green Zone got mortared every day. I mean, just you still had to be aware, and it was still known that you were in a war zone. Yeah, absolutely. It was. I mean, so it was not. I mean, it wasn't somewhere where you could just go, "Oh, I'm gone."
And that's one of the biggest, the hardest things to explain to somebody who's never been in it. Is yes, somebody may not be outside the fob, but you're getting mortared. That's still the fear of that every second of every day is a real thing.
And that can kill you.
Absolutely. Yep. So for me, I was 4 years in the military and going on 5. So I was still a specialist.
You young.
Yeah. And we were getting deployed to Bosnia. And so this is 95.
Okay.
So this is before the Milosevic stuff. This is the beginning when the Muslims were against the Croats and the Croats were against the Serbs. It was all of that. It was a mix of everybody fighting everybody. So the Sava River, there's a major bridge over there, and I was in a bridge building unit.
Okay.
So we got called up to go and replace a unit that failed, and we had to put the bridge up from Fort Benning. We left Fort Benning, Georgia, to go to Europe because the Europe unit that was over there, they set up their camp in a riverbed.
Okay.
And during the cold winter, the water goes away.
Right.
But then it starts to come back, and their equipment washed away. But that's a whole other story.
Y'all knew you were going over to replace that unit, or was it something
we found out? So we went. So this is how it literally happened. We were released for Thanksgiving break. Then we came back from Thanksgiving break, and that Monday morning, we got we right faced and marched into the chapel. And they told us, hey, you're about to deploy. So nobody was expecting this. You're about to deploy. And we were in Germany by December. Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. So mine was a little different. And I had a top secret clearance, right? Which is great. But also, if you're not ready for all that information, it can be even tougher. So I was allowed to go into these briefings that you look around, and I'm one of only maybe two E5 and below that's sitting in this daggone thing.
Like, do I need to know this?
Yeah, I want to be in there, but oh Lord, and they're telling you, the more of the truth, right? So I was scared because when you're in those briefings, they give you the real, right? And so it's not broken down yet to company, platoon, and squad level, right? And so you're getting a fire hydrant. You think you're getting a water fountain, but you're getting a fire hydrant. And then being that young, I didn't know all of what was going on. There were people who were in my unit that would talk to me, my platoon sergeant, or not my platoon sergeant, my maintenance sergeant, the motor sergeant, excuse me. And so he was talking to me and trying to help me understand. But the bottom line is we had like 40 some odd days from notification to us flying out to Germany, because we went to Hohenfels for winter training. Then we went to Hohenfels for NATO training, so we did all that training over there on how to deal with the public, how to deal with the press, setting up your perimeters, landmines, because all that stuff was happening over there in Europe. So we're getting another fire hydrant worth of training. And that was my first time ever going to Hohenfels, which is a monster. Especially in the winter. It's my first time on the Autobahn, all that stuff, right? I was on the Autobahn on a shuttle bus. So everybody else's Autobahn story is flying, and mine is hearing the whine of a bus going probably, 62 miles per hour? But anyway, Lamborghinis and everything was passing us. So initially, I didn't understand what was happening when we right-faced and marched into the chapel with the chaplain there. Then the battalion commander came in and the brigade commander came in, and they were telling us that we were about to deploy and telling everybody, hey, basically the short steps we have to do: identify who can deploy, request the numbers you need, and then let's go. And once again, we had to cross-pollinate.
Okay. Were y'all taking your own supplies? And
that's the thing.
Okay.
We didn't have enough time to take our own equipment.
So then you falling in on somebody else's stuff.
No, that's even worse. So we had to, because we were the first ones over there in the new area.
So you acquiring new stuff.
You know what Kegi is? So a Kegi site it's stored equipment that the military has around the world.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had to first identify our priority equipment, and then we had to put that on a C5. Yeah. And that's what we flew on. And then, and we refueled in air, which was a pretty amazing sight to see. But then we get on ground, and we get off and we go to Germany, right? And then our equipment went to Belgium, because that's where the Kegi was. Yeah. So we had to go to Belgium. We had to draw equipment. We had to PMCS.
How often is that stuff?
There's a unit there that maintains.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because it's like
you've
been in there for like 15 years.
Yeah. And so we had to go in there. We identify what we need. Basically, we had to MTO. I'm not going to get too specific on that, but we brought our unit back up to capable to execute. And then we loaded all that stuff on the railhead. And then we had to ride the train down to, yes. So my initial moment was excited but scared because hearing so much, and also I think I mentioned before it was the first time I ever been in charge of soldiers. So knowing, trying to give them as much information as possible, but also knowing if I give them too much, they're going to be scared to death. Because there's no need to have 3 scared people, and that's all I had, 2 soldiers. So that was a learning. That's why my leadership, that was a shock to my understanding of leadership.
Okay.
So went from scared and all that, and then the closer we got to it, the more I started to understand. We had to identify what we had to have from our own stuff, like PLL. Parts, stuff like that, right? So, like I said, I'm trying not to get too. But I was feeling more confident, not because I was understanding where we were going, because, like you said, you get caught up in the preparation. It gives you less to think about. And also, I was single, no children, so the only people I reported back to was my family. And so I didn't tell them a lot of stuff. I just told them when I was about to deploy. Then, because we hit the ground in phases, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. We went to Hohenfels. We did a week of training there. Then from Hohenfels, we went to Germany, took buses to Belgium. Got to Belgium. Then from Belgium, we did the keggy draw. We drew the equipment, and then we got the equipment on the railhead. Had to lash all that down, and then we rode the train from Belgium to Hungary. Yes. Now, here's something for people who don't know. A train moves because of an engine, right? Electricity is caused because the train is moving.
Okay.
When the engine disconnects, you lose all power, everything, right? And so it took us 3 days to get from Belgium to Hungary. And every night the engine would switch. So we're on the train with our unit, with our equipment, and at night the train would stop, and we ran out of water. The bathrooms were stocked, overflowing, and people started developing rashes. Yeah, and nobody knew what the rash was. So when we finally got to Hungary, we got quarantined. So this is my first deployment ever. It's my first time ever leaving the country. It's my 3rd time ever being on the airplane. So anyway.
Wow.
So we get to Hungary, and we are quarantined for, I want to say, about either 5 to 8 days.
At least a week.
I can't remember. And the worst part is we were quarantined right at the front of the base. So every incoming unit that was on those buses drove by us and looked over and saw us with the do not cross tape and 2 soldiers standing guard with M16. And so what we would do is, because not everybody in the unit had rashes, but we were on quarantine because some did. And to make you know, we were safe. It was just a hygiene rash that some people had, right? But we would act like that we were like coughing and stuff with some, you know, it was hilarious. Yeah, limping and falling over while buses are coming up. But anyway, we got an article in the paper, in the Army, not the Army Times. What was that? The Stars and Stripes. But anyway, we were good there. Then we had to download our equipment off the train.
Okay.
Then we had to drive our equipment into Bosnia. Now, mind you, driving in Europe is different than driving in America, mainly because big old trucks are not expected to go down them European streets. And we had to go through streets and everything. And so,
little narrow streets.
absolutely. And people who've never driven, people who were just recently licensed. And yes, we had to take the driver's license test before we got into and driving. But them little streets and them big old trucks, you know, it was an interesting thing. And then we got to, it's called Slavonski Brod, right? And, I take that back. We went from Belgium, I messed that up. Belgium, we got on buses to Hungary. Hungary, we put our stuff on the train. Yeah. Hungary, we got on the train. And then from there, we went, no, it can't be that. I can't remember. It's been 30 years ago. Oh. So I think it was, Belgium. We drew the equipment. We loaded the equipment. We got on the train. Yes. Then we got off the train in Hungary.
Okay.
And then we took buses or drove down to Slavonski Brod. No, we took buses to Slavonski Brod. Then we got in the equipment. And then that's when we had to do all the driving. Anyway, dang, sorry I messed that all up. Then we get there, and then we have to set up, it's called Camp Harmon. We had to set up base, and we were the first ones to set up bases. Yeah, so we went from mud.
That's some work.
Yep, then they put gravel in, finally. We went from GP tents to eventually they ended up building up the tents, meaning they put the plywood around them and just pulled them on like a sock. And that was okay, but the only heaters we had were pot bellies. And then we got kerosene heaters.
Ooh, all the dangers.
Oh my gosh, we had so many tent fires and so many, and people were draping plastic like about 5 feet off the ground to try to hold the heat in, and that's in Europe. So
creating saunas.
Yeah. So my first deployment was a mess, right? Mentally, it was a mess. But like you said before, the more you get focused into doing your job, the less you stress about stuff you can't control.
Yep.
And then while I was on the deployment, my unit separated from us. So I was in the motor pool, and I was responsible for the motor pool, and that's where my soldiers were. But the unit was on Camp Harmon, and our motor pool was away. So I was by myself with 2 soldiers, and we did not have a guard force. We had to do fire guard ourselves. 3 people doing fire guard every night.
So that was the layer of stress added on.
Yes. And then we wanted to just say we'll get in the sleeping bags and cut the fire off, which sounds smart, but you still got weapons. You still got, high value items in there. So anyway, it was a tough deployment. And then to this day, they say we didn't get shot at because we didn't get any medals or anything special. But there was always gunfire, going on. So it was, my confidence grew as the deployment process was happening, but there was such strange and like somebody was, like God was playing games with me, with my unit, not just me. Because like I said, we had to replace a unit, so we had to spin up and deploy so quickly without our own equipment and all that stuff. So it was a mess, but it got better.
You learned, yeah.
But the job was, and then actually doing your job day to day away from home, and in the new environment, it's just it's crazy.
It's different.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's my story.
All right. Hey, it's a story, especially for a first one, first time. Hey, so how did deploying affect your relationship with your spouse and children? And did you have a girlfriend, or because you didn't have any kids? So how long were y'all over there for?
We were over there for 179 days.
Okay.
Because they didn't want to kick it to 6 months.
Okay.
From the United States, because we had been making real money. But anyway.
So since you didn't have the kids or the wife or anything like that, how did your family, friends?
Yeah, that was tough.
How did it affect in that way? Because I know a lot of folks would be in that same.
Yeah. So back in '95, we didn't have. We had the direct phone, but a specialist promotable wasn't getting on that phone, right? And so, it took us a while to establish that line anyway. Once we got established there, but so we used to have Signal used to have those Humvees where they could set up the calls and connect all over. So we would actually it would rotate throughout the unit.
Okay.
And you would have, hey, it's your time to go make a phone call, and you'd go. You couldn't pick the time. You couldn't pick nothing. Yeah. So, of course, my mom was always answering the phone, but we probably communicated. They tried to let us communicate like once a week. Mm-hmm. They tried to do it that way, and the Army, not everything goes perfect. So sometimes the station would be down, sometimes it'd be up. So it was from a single person's perspective. Communication is where you want to have that touch of reality back home, but also, and I just want everybody to know, we want to stay in contact with you, but it is sometimes hard because as soon as you contact somebody who's not in your environment and not in the military, you have to relive everything because they want to ask you 1,000 questions. They want to ask you, okay, every 50 times while you're on the phone. And that, I'm not saying don't do it because it's your right to care about your loved one and stuff, but just know that that's added stress, especially if you're on a phone call and madness is happening around you.
Yep.
So,
and news is broadcasting stuff where you're like, okay, it's not.
Yeah, and then there's also things you can't say.
Yep.
So sometimes your family leaves the conversation not feeling any better, just knowing you're alive, but not feeling any better about your situation. Yep. Now you, on the other hand, you had family.
I had a wife and two young kids. Yeah. So I mean, it was a I don't like for them. I mean, it seems from my perspective, it just seemed like they were still going and doing soccer, going and doing football. Going to school and doing everything. And I think Audra was in. Was she in command? She might have been in command at that time too, of one of those blood units. What was she in, the 432nd, I think.
So they were living their life. How did that make you feel?
It made me feel, a little sad, just because stuff was going on without me. Yeah. Some of those moments and things were going on without me. Yeah. Especially with the kids, with my wife, it was just a matter of they were still doing things, making new friends and people who I didn't know who such and such was. Right. What the hell is he coming around, or who you talking? That thing. So it was one of those things where just your mind just. So you have to try to ground because you're going.
And you're in combat.
Yes, you're seeing shit every day, and then you don't want to get to the get to points where you're mad at them because they're out doing living their best life or doing what they
surviving.
Yeah, doing what they need to do when you're over here and you can't go. And your area is that fob or is that complex where you are, where you can't go,
your story is pretty much the same every day.
So
And they're out seeing new movies.
Yeah, doing all of those things. Doing all of those things. So it's like you try to. I know a lot of times I was like, they'd be telling me something, and I'm sitting there like, how y'all going to do that? Why ain't y'all over here,
Yeah.
depressed and listening to, because when you deploy that, you get, but y'all are talking, and it's just like the woe is me stories going back and forth, and it's like, what?
Let me tell you about my day.
Yeah,
Death,
like,
murder.
Y'all went to Atlanta. Y'all went to what? DC. What are y'all?
What
How
y'all
y'all
doing
doing
with
all
grandma?
this? Yeah. Why y'all doing all this without me? Yeah. So.
I learned that later, but at this time I didn't know.
Yeah, so trying to, I had to get myself, in the mindset where it's like I can't, and try to appreciate those times we had. Yeah, I'm sitting there talking, and being able to talk to them, or man, I'm trying to even think. Like doing the little messenger or whatever the Skype thing. How many times I even got this? I probably got the Skype maybe 4 or 5 times. It was like it was mostly like phone calls and pictures and things like that.
Were there ever times
we would shoot videos and send them, them over to them so that they, for like Christmas and things like that.
Were there any times where the kids didn't want to talk to you? Or not because they didn't want to talk to you,
because they were just
busy or something?
No, they would always. Well, Mackenzie for sure. My daughter, Miles is the same way. He was the same way at 5, 6 as he is now at 25. He's the same way. Where it's like, hey, yep, nope. All right, it was good talking to you too, Dad. All right, bye, Dad. All right, so like you bothering him, So he's been the same, but I understand. I understand that stuff. So that was it, and it was more. Yeah, it was for me. It was more of a trying to understand or come to the realization of where I was and where they were, and not hold it against them because they weren't.
Yeah.
Because
I get it.
Yeah, because
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And the worst part is you don't want to tell them stories to make them feel like you're feeling.
Oh, no.
You know what I'm saying? So you're battling not just what to tell them, but you're also battling how to stay present in the conversation by not getting irritated.
Well, because they wouldn't. Especially where I worked and what I saw every day, and pictures and things. I had to show you sometimes some of those pictures and stuff.
Why you gotta show me? You couldn't show them. Why you gotta show me?
You can see it. You need to see it, so you can understand. So you can understand what I'm talking about.
I was in the same green area, green zone.
Woo.
Nah, but I'm gonna tell you, even Nikki, her deployment where we were both in Iraq. Where she was platoon sergeant, but she was connected to, I want to say a MASH. I think it was a MASH. But anyway.
What year was this? Probably Cash.
Yeah, it was 2008, 9.
You're probably Cash.
Yeah, so, but anyway, just her stories from, because they got bombed all the time. Yeah, and it was crazy. But
and the crazy thing about that is that you get used to you get used to that because it was happening every day. So it was like, okay, what time is it? 4 o'clock. Yeah. Okay, we're about to get mortared. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's a whole nother story.
Yep.
All right. So, what coping mechanisms did you find effective during your deployment? Because we just talked about the stress.
I was working out.
Working out.
Yeah,
so
we worked out every. But I actually lost weight. Because you lose weight.
Yeah, eating.
Eating and running.
Yeah.
We run around our little hospital complex. Or on the go down to the thing on the treadmill and watching movies.
Yeah.
I think I took. I was able to take I tried to keep my mind moving,
like education,
doing things. Yeah, did I think I did my ILE class or part of it there that we could, the part that we could do. I tried to stay busy and not have a whole lot of time where I was just sitting there thinking about it, getting depressed, getting mad.
Digging that hole, that mental
because
hole.
your mind is your mind will
it'll
take you to some
absolutely
dark, dim places where you don't need to be, where you shouldn't be.
Or stay.
Or be, live.
Yeah.
You don't. So it's it was just trying to do some of those things that later on in life when we started having to do all of the resilience training and stuff that they would go, okay, so some of the stuff I was doing was in the right direction, because we didn't have any of that training back at that time. So it was just, and then just I think I was fortunate that it was enough that we could talk to each other. And we played video. That's what we did. So we had a what was the little thing? The little PS
Nintendo thing?
No, the PlayStation, like handheld. We used to play what was the one? God dog it.
Mario Brothers?
Not Mario
Super
Brothers,
Karts?
where you go into shooting and stuff. Grand Theft Auto.
Oh.
Woo!
Okay.
It would be like, and you could play like in teams.
Uh-huh.
So like when we had any like little downtime, or whatever, everybody had their little handheld. I can't remember PlayStation. I can't remember. It was the PlayStation one. But we would be back there just, running. So that was a bit for all. For all especially on our shift, that we would.
Because y'all were off at the same time and on the same time.
So because like it was, we would have like we would have at least one. We would call one night where we were off, where folks would try to do like laundry and stuff like that. But a lot of times, especially since I was working night shift, you end up in the area. I'll be in the back
overtime.
of the OR. Either because they needed help or just because you had a roommate that was working day shift that was sleeping that you couldn't
be wide
have
open.
on lights and all. So you just go. You do your laundry, you chill for a minute, then at a point you just go over and because then that was the group that you went and worked out with and did all the stuff you did anyway. So that was. So that's how I was coping over there.
So mine was before interwebs in the tents.
Mm-hmm.
So we and this is another thing you notice, right? During those traumatic moments, you bond with people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the sad part is you lose most of those relationships when you come back. But so when we were over there in all those different stages of craziness I just told you about, the things that kept us together and the coping mechanisms we had were music, because the old heads would always play their old schools, right? And then we'd play our hippity hoppity. And then we had spades.
That's old school now for some of the kids.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's the hardest thing in the world. Jokers call our stuff old school. But we had spades and dominoes and bidwiz. Yeah. And so, we would we'd identify who your partner was, your ride or die, in whatever game you was playing. And that bond became, it was almost telepathic, especially in spades. I didn't play bidwiz a lot because that was old people's game. And those old people now, at that time, were 20 years younger than I am now. But anyway, and so that was one of the coping mechanisms, is you really bond with people because you're basically forced to live with them. Mm-hmm. And you develop friendships, you develop enemies, you develop all kinds of stuff. And then we had the games to take the pressure off of you. We also had mail call was amazing. Yep. When you get a package full of Twizzlers and your favorite types of candy,
care packages,
absolutely. Yep. Your mom sends she used to make these unbaked cookies. Boy, them things was but anyway, so that's a coping mechanism, and that's something that family can do. When your people are deployed, you absolutely
Oh yeah.
send them things.
Send them their favorite things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And regularly. Like, do it at a time to where it's clockwork, so that you always know what to send, when to send, and they always know it's coming, because that lifts the spirit so much.
I mean, you'll request things because it's not, they don't have everything over there at the little makeshift PXs
Shop
and
at,
things like that.
The PXL.
Yeah. So
that's correct as well. People can't shave with what they're using. So, but anyway, another thing is people get into church because the military has services for. It's grown since I've been in my career. It used to be like Baptist. It used to be Catholic and
covering all of the
Protestant,
different religions.
When I was a drill sergeant, we had to let soldiers go out for Wiccan, right? The moment, so they go out into the woods and let them do their thing. So it's evolved just like society's evolved. But then finally, the thing that helped me cope while I was on deployment, it's absolutely the job. Trying to, because your job matters, and being able to execute your job, being able to take care of your soldiers, being able to basically not be the problem when you're in that environment, that there's a lot of focus on that. Especially if you're mature enough to understand it, which, not everybody is.
So how did you maintain a sense of normalcy for your family while deployed?
Once again, I didn't have a full-blown family because it was just me, and then I would talk to my mother, father, sister, brother. And so, well, I mean, but it was, you're right. I don't even know why I'm cutting it down.
No, you just didn't have a wife or kid at that first one.
So what I did was, I didn't do it immediately, but what I started to realize is if somebody writes you a letter, write them back.
Yep.
Right? Because if they're reaching out, that means they're concerned.
Say my letter writing is a thing.
Yeah. Yes. When people send you stuff, acknowledge it. And then finally, when you can, make phone calls, and not so that it's a detriment to you in the mission, but try to set up consistent times to where, I'm going to call you every day, every other day, every week at this time. And then when you can't get there, make sure that you immediately come back and tell them. Because the one thing I've learned over the years of deploying is there are people that really care about you and are concerned about you. And when you're in an environment to where it's life and death, you can absolutely lose that concept, right? And meaning you get so caught up in what you're doing that you don't talk to your loved ones enough. So now they're pulling their hair out and panicking because all they hear are the news. They're not sure exactly where you are. So if something happens in that country, they don't know how affected you are. So that's what I would say. My sense of normalcy was absolutely just trying to stay in contact with people.
I mean, and that's about the same thing for me. Just trying to stay in contact, and trying to whenever I did call them, or I'm trying to think, did we have a number? I think we had a number that they could call ours if it was an emergency or something, because I had a phone call one time that scared the shit out of me. But it was Miles had was playing. It got nicked or bit by a dog or something. My wife, who works in blood, been working in blood for the last 30 plus years, doesn't like to see blood. So he had to get stitches. So she couldn't stay. And this when the boy was probably 6. I think it was probably 6. He had to be 6. So he had to stay in the room where they were doing stitches
by himself.
Because she couldn't stay in there. So I was on the phone with him in there while he's, like, calm down. Yeah. So,
wow.
Just staying in contact and being there.
Audra.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the same way. It's not a secret. That's for sure. But yeah, just maintaining that connection.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain as well as you can.
And one more thing I want to highlight is when you make contact with the people in the back, it's a challenge, but it's something you have to do. Is you have to listen to their stories too,
Yep.
because like Lance said, they're still living as well, and so you can't get yourself in the mindset that my problems are more important than yours, because that's going to break a family. That's going to break friendships. Is if all they can do is cater to you and then you don't have to cater to them. That'll last for about 15 to 20 days when you initially get there. But eventually you're going to have to listen to their problems. You're going to have to step back into their world and help if you can. And especially if you consider yourself the head of the family, male or female, right? It's your responsibility to be present when you're having those conversations and not just talk about your mess.
Yep.
And hear theirs as well.
Yep.
All right. So what support systems were most beneficial during and after the deployment for you? Once again, we're in 2 different decades on our first.
What was most beneficial? What systems? I'm trying to think of what systems were. Well, the reintegration was good because we had to go and talk to, you go through your medical piece. Then you had to go through some of your mental health piece, which was beneficial with all the one source and all of that stuff was big. So, so it was all of those different things that were, if you didn't want to go through the traditional military path, then you could had some different places you could go that were run by nonprofit, civilian things where people weren't going to be hold any judgment against you, because it was a lot of things that, especially during that time where it was looked down upon for
mental health issues.
And I know that's another class we'll
talk about.
We'll talk about.
Yeah.
But those things, just all of the financial service, all of those different ones before and coming back. So because you make, you can make a nice little piece of change as far as some of the different little deployment bonuses. Absolutely. And some of the tax-free and things like that.
Absolutely.
And you want to try to save some of that and use it so that it's
to put yourself in a better situation.
Yeah, so that it's beneficial for you, so that you just don't burn through everything.
And be in the same.
And be in the same predicament whenever you left. When you try to come out a little bit in front of that, and then just family and friends. You come back and everybody gives you some, time in your work, they give you some time to try to readjust back to the pace of normal life,
Which is easier to do if you're being led. It's harder to do if you're the leader. Because time is not something that you get a lot of.
Yep.
And so my support system, like, there's literally a 10-year time difference. So it's crazy. Before we left theater, there was basically a handout, and we had to write down and answer questions like, was there anything major that happened over here that affects you? And especially during that time, if mental health came up to you as a problem, your career was done as far as making it to the top. And that was real. So the old head, and even back then, I know I said it drastically, but even back then it was drastic, but it wasn't as drastic as the old heads at that time made it feel, because they would tell you, like the old staff sergeants would tell, me, a young specialist promotable, I was 24, I think, maybe. But anyway, telling me that, hey, don't write down the truth, because if you write down the truth, then they're going to call you to the side, and then they're going to ask you a bunch of questions, and that stuff goes in your records. And they were telling the young soldiers that, because there was some truth into it, but the question is, was it as drastic a decision that a young person would have to make? And so coming
they
back,
could trust you. I think that was one of the big things, is that if you were having any of those problems or anything like that, then it was like a trust thing.
absolutely,
like,
are you?
You can't make a good
Absolutely.
decision. I can't.
Can you
trust
lead? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what that does is it brings it back to, once you get back to the unit, it's basically the same thing. They give you the same sheet and you filled it out. And then, so if you were considered smart at that time, you didn't have to be seen by mental health, so because you never wrote anything that really bothered you. And then another negative is the close friendships that you had in that environment, they go back to their life, right? So if you became, if your spade partner was married and had kids and you're single, Joker goes back to being a dad, and then you go back to wilding out, So what I mean is, you don't have those people that you can talk to about it. So when I came back from my first deployment, the support system was very, I'll just say this, you basically got to choose if you wanted to use a support system that was connected to the military, and your choice was based off of something you had no idea about, how it could affect you in the future. But when it comes back to family and friends, you may not always be able to talk about everything with people who are not in that environment or understand the military, but you can sort of catch back up to life, because like Lance said, it doesn't stop when you leave, no matter how bad you think it will. Just like the great Army song, it goes rolling along. Yep. So I say the best support system that you can have is a foundation of family and friends that you trust. And that's why I say it's so important that you try to, especially if you're married, especially if you have close friends, try your best to take your time and explain to your spouse or your friend what you do, how it affects you, so that when you are in those tough situations, you can have somebody who has some sort of understanding, so you're not starting all the way over.
That's runs right into what I wanted to ask you too, is how did reintegration into life go, after go back into life into after, I guess, post deployment, going to after you got back, you did your couple of weeks and you were going back to, okay, I got to get up at 5 for PT. And
so I did a total of 5 deployments in the military. And I can tell you that every deployment, I lost something. I lost an ability. I lost an ability to sort of step right back into life, right? So my very first deployment, after being in military vehicles for 6 months straight, after sleeping on a cot and a sleeping bag, after eating MREs and eventually the breakfast people came and Brown and Root came in and started cooking breakfast or the meals. After that repetition and then walking back into freedom, like we couldn't leave our base. It wasn't called FOB back then. We couldn't leave our camp unless we were in a convoy, right? And so you can't just walk off. You can't just go and shop. You can't just go and do all that stuff. Now, deployments evolved over the years, all right, because eventually they would start inviting locals on to sell stuff, especially movies and TV.
Yeah.
But so reintegration, my first deployment, it took a minute to realize and act like I was out of that environment. But getting back to playing ball, getting back to listening to music, getting back to cruising around. I was in Benning at that time, cruising around and basically starting life again that way. That was cool. It wasn't cool, but it was okay. It wasn't hard for me to integrate. But as the years went on, it got harder and harder to integrate.
Yeah.
So what about you?
I mean, for me, is with the
because you were gone 15 months.
Yeah, with the family and stuff.
That's
We were just
birthdays.
trying to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's growth spurts.
Yeah.
So
A couple. We were just trying to get the connection back. With the kids.
Yeah.
Like I can do that. I can help with that. Since my wife had been
I'm here too.
doing everything.
Yeah.
It's like I got it. I can do it.
Oh, yeah, they became reliant on her so
yeah.
much. Yeah,
Yep.
that you're. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I mean, it was, it's like I know how to do. I can do math. I can run and So it was just trying to get them comfortable with me again.
Yeah.
And
not take it personally.
Yep. And for me, and for me also, just to coming from that environment and mindset, to remember that, especially with my kids, these are young kids, I can't be popping off. And because I got labeled as because we had nicknames for everybody, and I was Mad T. Because I was quick to
go off
on somebody or bullshit, I was just, woo. So it was
majors,
getting back to being
them iron majors.
being the dad, the father, the husband,
and not a bully,
and not exactly, and knowing that I wasn't getting shot at, wasn't I was there to try to help nurture and love, and people were loving me and loving on me and stuff. So it was I will say that it went well. I mean, I had the I'm extremely fortunate that I had a spouse that was also dual military.
Had she deployed before you?
She hadn't deployed yet. Nope, she deployed right after, and she deployed a couple of times. And that's the thing. It's like we were deployed to the same area, and her deployment was different than mine. That's the thing too, is that people should realize or have realized or know that it's like you could deploy to the same area a couple of times. 2 or 3 times, and have a different experience every time. You will
have a different
just
experience
because of what's going on at the time. And her experience, whenever she would call back or tell me about it, I was like, "What are you talking about? Y'all got to do what?
Yeah.
We couldn't do none of that." So we understood what was going on in each other's areas. Because we could. I knew that, because she was in the lab at that time, so I knew what the lab folks did, and I knew, when she would tell me where she was staying, I knew where she was living, and I could say, "Oh, did you go down to such and such? Is this vendor down there still, or whatever?" Or
get me.
Yeah, that's right. But I understand they got these movies down there.
See if they have seasons.
You can get all 25 seasons for $5. So yes, but. Coming back home, it's always, I think it was more of they bounce back faster than me, just because it was just that you wake up and and this is going back to the mental health, and you wake up with different nightmares, or you see certain things that might trigger you, and just trying to remember that you're dealing with your family or your friends and not
the enemy.
prisoners, or it's the pace is not what it was before. You're back to a regular, be a real person,
and just
type
just tracking what he said, and not only like I said, we're talking about first deployments, talking about reintegrating with your family. You still have to work. Remember, you came back from this environment of, we'll say, hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you still have to come back and try to regain your mental health, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, you have to consider everybody in your house's mental health, because they went through crap too.
Or even at work, when you go back to work, especially like for me, I go back to work, and we had a resident that was talking about, we got this emergency. I'm like, what is it? And it was something it was like a appy. It was something that was like, that's not in my head, after going through the 15 months and seeing what I saw and working on and doing some of the cases and things that were emergencies for us,
life and death.
And to come back and we're getting, just giving folks a bunch of crap, yelling, doing stupid stuff that you shouldn't be doing, and calling it an emergency. You get kind of upset, and you get, had to go around and talk to your boss in our office, like, okay, are you okay? Are you fine? So that it's like, and that's like people who haven't, that's the other thing too, when you go back to work, everybody didn't deploy, so trying to get them to understand where you were, where you coming from.
Without being a jerk.
Yeah, without being.
But you ain't got that. You ain't got no patch. You can't talk. No, I get it, man. Another thing is, like, the unit does its job. The Army does its job, meaning it has the criteria for what should happen. Because once you come back, and once they release you to your family, it's usually 24 or 48 hours before you have to be back. And then when you actually come back, then there's like touch points that you got to go through that leads up to receiving your equipment and putting everything back in its spot. Right. And then there's block leave, where you go on leave that's not charged to you, so that you can sort of get that stuff off your shoulders. But depending on if you're being led or if you're the leader, that 14 days leave could mess around only be 8 days or 6 days, because you're still receiving phone calls. There is a rear detachment that your unit went forward, and so now the people left back, they still have to hold the spot of the unit, right, and maintain the equipment and whatever's left there, and the people that are left there. But when you come back, you've got this bond with these people that if somebody goes out, like, a situation where we were on the rollback and soldier died from a motorcycle accident. That's not something you let rear detachment handle, because if you're the leader, and I was the first sergeant at the time, you step back in and you take that. So, but what does that do? That takes time away from your family, takes time away from you, and all that stuff to try to get back. So reintegration there's a lot that the military person who's been in that deployed environment, they have to adjust themselves and fix themselves in such a quick time, just so they can be able to walk into their family's arms and the house, and not blow up because the spouse changed the cable, or now all of a sudden you got,
why'd you cut your hair?
It's tough. It's a tough thing. And then if you don't have a foundation strong enough to handle that before you left, and it didn't maintain or grow while you were gone, now you're walking back to cold shoulders because the kids don't know you. Man, he was gone for 15 months, his first deployment. What if his kids were 1 and 2, you know? And then he's walking back and his wife is, not him, but say it's true that wives cheat on their husbands while they're gone and have whole new relationships and are waiting for that person to come back. And wives do this, and husbands do the same thing. And then they're waiting for you to come back just so they can tell you, hey, I'm no longer in love with you. I'm going. So there's all kinds of things. And if you don't have a foundation where you can fall back on somebody to lean on and help straighten you up again, and the training to help straighten yourself up, then the only way that some people see out is jumping off the cliff.
Yep.
And that's the tragedy of deploying.
Yep. Just try to have you a good support system. If you know that you're deploying, just try to get you a good support system prior to. If
you know you're going into the military,
yeah,
start building that support system. Start sharing what you do. Start sharing your emotions.
Yep.
And start trusting and loving first, and make sure you're getting that love back, and then trusting so that you can have those real conversations.
Yep.
Because there were times when I've redeployed where everybody I saw I wanted to punch in the face, and I am not joking. And Nikki was like, "Hey, you can't do that," and it was. That
wouldn't be a good thing.
Oh my gosh! So, but enough about that. So, just the bottom line, right? Deploying into a theater of operations is life changing. I mean, it's really hard to express the emotions that go through a deployment to someone who's never experienced it. Because even if, like, I can convey the message of what I experienced while I was, we call it downrange, the words, even if they're the perfect words, right, it still won't feel like it resonates with that other person, because we have an idea in our head of how somebody would react, right? If I tell somebody that we were on a convoy and we were halfway through through our checkpoint, right, and then right beyond our checkpoint we found an IED, and 7 vehicles were in front and 3 of them were behind, and I'm the one that's right in front of the IED, right? Trying to make that resonate with somebody who has no understanding of what you did every day, what you saw, and then how you're supposed to react in a realistic way.
Yeah, some of the things that you encountered every day.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
and they don't react the way that you think they can react. They're supposed to react. Then that's also a burden on you.
You can't get
it. So just try to understand if you're a civilian, but if you're in that military and you're coming back, don't close down on them because you don't believe they'll ever understand. Right. That's all I'm saying.
So the challenge is staying connected.
Yeah.
To those friends, families, people back at the house, even when that distance or that time or whatever is there, attempts, it tries to, and some folks it will like tear them apart.
Absolutely.
Tear them from you, So just try to stay in contact. Try to communicate. It doesn't have to be an hour-long conversation. It can be a 5-minute conversation. 10-minute conversation. Could be a letter.
Yeah.
It could. I mean, now it could be email.
Yeah,
I mean, folks
message,
got emails and things, text messages and stuff. I mean, just those little things keep you connected to those friends and family and people. To let them know that you're okay. To let you know that they're okay. Yeah. And I mean, because sometimes, as long as I knew that they were doing fine, they were good. I go on, keep doing what I need to do, because we didn't have like long sessions on phone, phone calls and things like that. So,
and I know I said that the military person has to adapt and adjust a lot, But we can't forget, so does the civilian, or so does the person who's back and not in that environment. They have to walk on eggshells, just like you have to walk on eggshells. But the more you communicate, like Lance said, the thicker those eggshells are, maybe they can turn into rocks, right? Yep. So, but leaving it at that, go ahead.
I would say because you want them to still thrive and have fun.
That's a win.
You want them to do all those things because they're growing, which is going to, in turn, in the end, it's going to help you grow.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want anybody being stagnant just because you're in a situation where you can only do so much. You want them to also grow and
win.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's much better to come back to a winning environment than all heck. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, but bottom line, thank you for joining us here at 4 Titles, 1 Truth. Stick around because the conversations will keep getting better. Not only because we'll learn how to talk better, but because you'll be involved.
That's right. Leave a comment with either a remark that you feel we need to hear or a question we may be able to help you answer.
Yeah. And hey, like we always say, let's keep the conversation going. All right, see you soon.
Peace.